If our mouths were filled with song, as the waters fill the sea, and our hearts rang out in joy, like the roaring of the waves, if our lips could offer praise as boundless as the sky, and our eyes were to shine like the moon and the sun. Shira kayam ushonenu rina ka'amon galav v'siftotenu shevach kirmei rakia ve'einenu meirot Hashemesh v'chayareach.
If our mouths were filled with song, as the waters fill the sea, and our hearts rang out with joy, like the roaring of the waves, still we could not fully thank you.
נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש קדוש Kadosh Adonai Tzevot Melol Chol Haaretz Kevodo Adir Adirenu Adonai Adonenu Mahadir Shimcha Bechol Haaretz. Echad Hu Eloheinu Hu Avinu Malkeinu Hu Moshienu Yashmienu Berachamav Leinei Kol Chai Ani Adonai Kadosh 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 Kadosh
tradition in recent years in our congregation to, on Yom Kippur morning, as we begin the Torah reading, to take a few moments and to appreciate the generations of our community. And so we've asked representatives of each of the decades to stand here and pass the Torah, midor ledor, from generation to generation, beginning with our centenarian, our 100-year-old Morris Wadnicki, turned 100 on Shabbat this year at services, was called to the Torah. I'm sorry, but I guess that means you each have admitted to your decade. All the way down to a new baby, God willing, next year with one of our pregnant congregants. So we're going to be passing the Torah as the cantor sings those words. Midor ledor, from generation to generation, we pass this tradition.
We are gifts and we are blessings. We are history in song. We are hope and we are healing. We are learning to be strong. We are words and we are stories. We are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. Ledor vador nagid mon lecha. Ledor vador, we protect this chain from generation to generation. Ledor vador, these lips will praise your name. Ledor vador nagid mon lecha. Ledor vador, we protect this chain from generation to generation. Ledor vador, these lips will praise your name.
Thank you all. Ad 120 bis 120. May you all enjoy good health to 120 and not a day more. In this
Shabbat
moment,
shalom.
when we have this strong Jewish community and this strong country we live in and this incredibly strong state of Israel, this will remind us as we invite forward the students who spent this summer in Israel, along with members of our congregation. And we invite forward any of you who are here who have ever served in the Israel Defense Forces as a reminder of that sacrifice.
Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet who stern in passion stressed, a thoroughfare of freedom beat across the wilderness. Call on my liver, Penira, Nefesh Yehuda. בירושלים, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. Oh, beautiful, for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber ways of grain, for purple mountain majesties, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
You know, I always feel, to some degree, it's redundant to speak about Israel at this moment, and yet there are a few things I want to share with you. We don't write those speeches. You understand, Israel changes people, not just kids. Israel changes people, and particularly Jews. There's a reason we push this. There's a reason we believe every single one of us should not only go, but should go over and over again. There's not only a reason why that you should not only go to Israel, but be connected with Israel. When I was their age, I didn't know anyone that had ever been to Israel. Anyone in my high school that had been to Israel. I didn't know anyone in those days that would get up and give a speech like any one of them gave about being proud of being Jewish. It was still, even though it was the early 60s, was still a time where you didn't do that. You didn't stand up and say, I'm proud, because it wasn't 1967 yet, or 73, or anything that's happened since. It was still a time in America where it wasn't so public, where Jews still worried about being Jewish. I want to share with you two show and tell items. This is an olive wood book. It was created at about 100 years ago in Israel, and it was mainly created for Christian pilgrims to the Holy Land, because Christians, when they visit the Holy Land, wanted to bring something back. Very few people had cameras 100 years ago. So what they created, and by the way, it was a Jewish company that created this. Business is business, right? But it is made out of the olive wood of Israel, and there are pictures, not photographs, but drawings of the holy sites in Israel. And then opposite it is a page to paste flower petals in. Partly because Christians like to place, they like that idea of cut flowers. You see it in Christian cemeteries all the time. That's something that Jews did for Christians to make a living while we were trying to live in the land that was called Palestine at the time. So what did Jews do when we went there or when we thought about it and wanted a souvenir. This is what we did. We had a clump of earth from Eretz Yisrael. That's what this is. This is a bag of earth that goes back to the 40s that was sealed by the rabbinate with a seal on it because Jews dreamed of coming to that earth. And if we couldn't get there while we were living, then we dreamed of at least being buried with that earth. Because what Jews do at cemetery is to affirm the natural world. It's why we put stones on our graves and not traditionally cut flowers, things of nature. We call cemeteries Beit Chaim, the house of the living, because we believe that no one ultimately ever dies. We just go on to a different existence. So here were Jews trying to make a living in Eretz Yisrael, and what they did is they had to find souvenir ways to sell to Christians, and dreaming of going to Israel, and all they had was a clump of earth in their home. And you and I live in a day when we can just hop on a plane, like Michael Bloomberg did, while planes were being shut down, and just fly to Israel. It's not cheap, but we can do it. We can go there whenever we want to. These kids were there in war, and they came back enthusiastic. They came back moved. They were there in maybe what you thought might be the worst time. And they found it exhilarating to be with Jews who were not afraid even of missiles falling. They saw the Iron Dome rocket. They saw the bombs. They felt the earth shake. And yet they came back affirmed and believing Jews. If that isn't reason enough to get your kids and grandkids and you to Israel, I don't know what else is. You know, Leonard Fine, one of the great Jews that we lost this year, wrote this in 1982 about the Lebanon War. He said there are two kinds of Jews in the world. There's the kind of Jew who detests war and violence, who believes that fighting is not the Jewish way, who willingly accepts that Jews have their own and higher standards of behavior. And not just that we have them, but that those standards are our lifeblood and what we are about. And there's the kind of Jew who thinks that we've been passive long enough, who's convinced that it is time for us to strike back at our enemies, to reject once and for all the role of being a victim, who willingly accepts that Jews cannot afford to depend on favors of others and that we must be tough and strong. And the trouble is, Leonard Fine said, most of us are both kind of Jew. We are both. We hold both, and I certainly am. I do hold Jews to a higher standard, here and in Israel. I want Israel to be at a higher standard than other countries in the world. I also understand there's a double standard in the world. But I'm a Jew. I have a right to a double standard for my people. I want us to be better. And I also look at what went on, and I say, thank God we had special forces there. Because what would Rosh Hashanah have been this year? I want you to imagine this. Had we not gone to war in Gaza, had those tunnels not been discovered, and on Rosh Hashanah we would have come to synagogue and heard about hundreds of Hamas terrorists leaping out of tunnels, slaughtering men, women, and children in the kibbutzim and moshavim and villages in the south, and taking dozens of Israeli men, women, and children as captives and threatening to execute them if Israel didn't accede to their demands. That's what we would have seen. We would have been in mourning as a people today. We would have been shrieing Gewalt. And instead, those 66 soldiers who died, most of them died going in those tunnels and trying to find out, without hurting innocent Palestinians, where they came out on the other side. I also believe there are things that were done that were terrible. That's war. I want to read to you from Leon Wieseltier about this summer. According to a poll of the Israel Democracy Institute, 95% of Israelis believe that war in Gaza is just, he wrote during the war. It's easy to see why. Self-defense is also a moral duty. But only 4% believe the Israeli military has used excessive force. That makes me queasy. Unanimity, or close to it, is no guarantee of truth. No excessive force anywhere. It is not sickening that Israel is defending itself. It is, he said, by the standard of Jewish historical experience, exhilarating. It's exhilarating that Jews are defending ourselves against those who would kill us. But, he adds, some of what Israel is doing to defend itself is sickening. And that's why Israel has opened up 99 inquiries to incidents in that war. They open them up themselves, and there will be some that will go to prison, that will lose their commissions because of what they did in war. War is hell. America has been fighting dirty wars like everybody else does. And we have killed far more innocents in Pakistan with drones, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, than Israel even comes close to, even in percentage. Proportionality is about the threat. And when missiles are being rained down upon you day after day, and you're hearing sirens and running into bomb shelters day after day, not only once, but you heard it 2 and 3 times. What is the proportionality? It is to make it stop, whatever it takes. And you try, and you do what you can, and you regret killing innocents. We all do. They certainly do. I don't know any Israeli who has celebrated the death of Palestinians who were innocent, of children and women and men who were just going about their business. Nobody celebrates in Israel. And yet the Palestinians celebrate even those who have killed our Israeli kids, those 3 teenagers, when Israel finally caught the 2 that were responsible, and they were killed in a shootout. They were made martyrs. There were celebrations in the streets of Gaza. I wish they would mourn for their people the way we mourn for ours. We live in an incredible time as Jews that doesn't make it without fear and without dread. We do face an enemy, not just Jews, but the West. We face an enemy that has no address. You know, the Soviet Union had an address. Nazis had an address. Hirohito had an address. There was a society. There was a system that we could oppose. There is no address to this fanatical Islam that has arisen. It arises whenever an angry Muslim decides to take a bomb into a crowded area. It is at any moment something that can erupt. And you can't cut off the head. You can't destroy the headquarters because it just is everywhere that they are. It must be fought both from within by the Islamic world, and it must be fought wherever its violence shows up. I recommend to you a great essay from this summer from a man that I don't agree with on almost anything. His name was Sam Harris. He's a great, wonderful writer. He's an atheist, an avowed atheist. He's often very identified with the left, and he wrote an article called Why I Don't Criticize Israel. And the last line of it is, today we are all Israel, only some of us haven't realized it yet. Today we are all Israel. He's speaking to the West. Europe, America, all the West. We are all Israel, only some of us haven't realized it yet. We must fight this war. We must do this. We must try and not kill innocents, as Israel does. And we're not doing it just for Israel. We're doing it for all of us, because they're shooting at you and me. They're blowing up here. It's not just 9/11. The plans are being made. And we discovered tunnels that upset their plans in Israel. We are trying as Americans to discover their plans for here and for Europe. We shouldn't kid ourselves to believe that this is going to stay in Syria or in Iraq. It is the world we live in. We need to face up to it. It is a time when there is evil. There is a world that doesn't want us to have freedom and doesn't want us to practice the way we practice our life. They want us to be different. They want us to conform to their way, and they will use any method to get there. There was a beautiful little story told by one of my rabbinic friends when he was in Israel. There's a little area in Jerusalem called Geula. It's a neighborhood. Geula, for those of you who know Hebrew a little, you know it means redemption. The word. It's what they named this little area. Geula, redemption. And my friend was lost, and he was looking for that neighborhood, and he stopped a man in a kippah, and he said, "Excuse me," in Hebrew, "do you know where I can find Geula?" And he said, "Here in Israel, Geula is always very close. Redemption is always close." And it is. Redemption is always close in Israel because you heard about the resilience of those Israelis. They don't stop. They don't bemoan their situation. They get up out of the bomb shelter and they go back. I heard this incredible story of one of my other friends that was there this summer, who he was at the windmill. Some of you know where it is, over in Jerusalem, the windmill. And that's a very famous place for brides and grooms to take pictures. They like to go out in their bridal gown and their tuxedo and take pictures there. So there was a whole line of them, and they're taking pictures one after another, and the siren goes off. So they all go to the bomb shelter, and they're all in the bomb shelter. And as soon as the all clear went, they went back up and took pictures. Back up and took pictures of their weddings. They were there crammed into that space with wedding gowns. And they went back up, and they all celebrated their weddings. And when the bombs went off during the weddings, when the alarm went off, they went to the bomb shelter, and they came back and danced the hora. These are Jews. These are our Jews today. This is what we are because Israel exists. And some of you who are here, the young ones particularly, don't remember what it was like to not feel this way, to not have this pride, to not have this sense of power like any other human being who defends themselves. And I want to take redemption as well and acknowledge not only Michael Bloomberg, but Lady Gaga, who went to Israel and performed when there was pressure on her not to. And I want to tell you what she told the Tel Aviv audience. "Put up your hands and cheer for yourselves. You are strong. You are brave. You are confident. And I blanking love Israel." I changed the word. Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones played in Israel with the Stones this year, and he learned 20 phrases in Hebrew, which he used throughout the concert. I challenge you, here, this year, you learn 20 phrases in Hebrew. If Mick Jagger can do it as a 70-year-old rocker, everyone here can do it and show that we affirm Hebrew. And I also want to acknowledge Joan Rivers, alaiha shalom. When she was challenged, she said if they were shooting rockets at us from New Jersey, we would do away with New Jersey. And then she received threats on her life and had to hire bodyguards at that time in the summer. You know, there are people who are standing up for us. Do you know where the biggest demonstration was in the world, pro-Israel, this summer during the Gaza war? It was in India. Hindus, Buddhists were in the streets supporting Israel's right to defend itself. And do you know which social media was the most positive for Israel this summer? China. The social media in China went crazy in support of Israel. We do have friends. We do have people that understand around the world. We have a problem in Europe. Anti-Semitism has not died in Europe. The virus is still there, and it is rising. There are things we need to do. There is work to be done, not only here, but in Israel. but redemption exists mostly in Israel with those Israelis. Do you know why we have Iron Dome? It started with a man named Brigadier General Benny Gold, who had an idea that they could build an anti-missile system. And no one in the Israeli bureaucracy believed in it. And so he, like many good Israelis with chutzpah, as we heard, he plowed ahead without listening to his superiors. And eventually he convinced them. And he convinced AIPAC to lobby our Congress and our administration. And the money was given for the research. And the research took place, and only 7 civilians were killed out of about 4,000 rockets, many of them headed at major population studies in population centers. How many would have been killed without Benny Gold? And what about Michael Harari, who just died, Alaha Shalom? I don't know if you even noticed it. It's a man you won't know what he did, because he worked for the Mossad. But his exploits are legendary among the Secret Service world. And we have those people. Now, I want to just finish with one thing. A lot of us remember growing up with Catch-22, Joseph Heller's book. You remember Yossarian. There's a scene where Yossarian says, "They're trying to kill me." And he's going out of his head. And his friend says, "No one's trying to kill you." And he says, "Then why are they shooting at me?" And he says, "No one's shooting at you. They're shooting at everybody." And Yossarian says, "And what difference does that make?" They're shooting at everybody. Everybody. Everyone in this room, everyone in Miami Beach, everyone in America, everyone in Israel, everyone. We're in this, whether we like it or not. We are all Israel. Only some of us don't know it yet. So, right now you're here. You got a lot of material there from AIPAC. You got our trip that's going to Israel this next summer. I'm welcoming you to come on board, be with us, bring your children, bring your grandchildren. Come if you've been there again, come again with us. It's going to be, like always, a life-changing trip. You've got the Israel bonds material. Take it out. Buy Israel bonds. If you've never done it before, do it this year. Do it because you're proud of being Jewish. Do it because you're proud of being a part of the Israel experience, this incredible miracle that hasn't existed for thousands of years, that is our treasure and that we take for granted. You know, it turned 66 this year. You know what was special about that? Nothing. It was a normal year up until the summer. It was just a regular Independence Day, because it's a real land that lives and breathes and goes about its business and deals with its problems. That doesn't mean there isn't work to be done, but we here should affirm our connection. So I ask you now, take out that bonds card, fill it out, put your name on it, invest as much as you can, commit to being involved in AIPAC, give to Federation's 100% campaign. That all aids Israel and the Jewish community. Come to Israel. And when we ask you to vote in the World Zionist elections, vote for Artza. It helps our community in Israel to remain strong. We can do things together. You and I are not going to learn, most of us, how to fire an M16. Most of us don't want to. But you and I, most of us, are not going to do that. But we can do these things, and they all make a difference. Just remember, without AIPAC, without Israel bonds, there would have been no Iron Dome. There would have been no discovery of those tunnels. And you and I would have ripped our clothes and worn sackcloth and ashes for the hundreds and hundreds of dead in the south of Israel who would have been surprised on Rosh Hashanah and who weren't, because, thank God, Israel has the IDF and we have a strong Jewish community. Join me now. Buy bonds. Do something good today.
Let the morning sun arise, our prayers at dawn recall. But for those whom darkness found, there are no words at all. So before the flame burns low, be sure you've seen the light. Choosing how you live or die is each man's sacred right. And though we may fight again, it's peace that we must win. So sing together with our hearts, raise high in hope. Come, let us now begin. The time has come to sing out for peace. Let your voice be strong and cry shalom, so all men may hear. Joining now in song. Lachen rak shiru shir la shalom, al tilcha shut tfilah. Mutav tashiru shir la shalom, b'tze'aka gdola. Od yesh mifras lavan ba'ofek, mul anan shahor kaved, kol shenivakash lu yahi. V'im b'chalonot ha'erev or nerot hechag ro'ed, kol shenivakash lu yahi. Lu yahi, lu yahi, ana, lu yahi, kol shenivakash lu yahi.